Good morning.
Morning.
Our esteemed guests, our partners, Harvard University, University of Nairobi, all invited guests and my colleagues from USIU. It's a pleasure for me to be part of a conference that is talking about language, because when I began making choices on what to study, see, there's a point in your study period where other people make choices for you. So you just roll with the choices. But when I began making choices on what to study, I made choices to study language. And so when I'm handling language, I am happy. Now, the program tells me to talk about the question of language in context. And I began with trying to interpret what that means, whether that means context at USIU, which Professor Rono has covered very well, or it means context in Kenya, or it means context in this conference. And I decided I would talk about context in this conference, and probably that will take care of a few other things. This context is law and language. And I was just thinking that probably should be language and law. Because alphabetically, N comes before W. Now that's just part of my teaching. Now, and I just decided to think of the question of language in the context of this conference, but also in the context of Kenya. And I thought about law and lawmaking. And I thought, now the lawmaking process, for example, in my country, mainly takes place in English. The debates in Parliament are in English. You can contribute in Kiswahili, because Kiswahili is also an official language and our national language, but basically, practically, it takes place in English. And one of the questions that one asks is, when some of our members of Parliament, the people we elect to represent us, are struggling even with casual English, and for some of them, even Kiswahili is a challenge. We listen to them. Will my MP fully know what the law he is voting on my behalf for really says and what it means? And because those ones are usually drafted by the legal profession, and when they are drafted and they are arguing and they are told this and that, and I have sent him there to represent me, and he speaks my mother tongue very well, that's how he convinced me to vote for him. Does he fully understand? And when he has understood it well in English and he has voted for it and comes back to the village, does he have the ability to translate and let me know when I might be caught? Because they say ignorance is not, what do they say, is not a defense. And I am ignorant of the law, because even when it was made, my MP did not understand. That's a question that we may want to look at. Now, the other question in context of language and law, I'm thinking that we may need to consider as we debate today, is about the law enforcement. Now, most of the times, many of us get to know the law when the police tell us. The police tell you, so they stop you. Like for me, many times I encounter the police on the road. They stop you, they go around your car, and then they tell you what you are not doing well, what is not right. And then they don't tell you cap this, cap that, but kind of they are the law. So either you will come and tell them, okay, book me to appear in court, or do what most Kenyans do. Just say, Nisamene, and you turn your clenched hand and stretch it before you get it back. Now, one of the questions we want to ask is, when we are recruiting and training the law enforcers, do we consider the language of the law? Do we consider their ability to understand the law that they are enforcing? And I think in many situations, yesterday one of the speakers told us that even in UK, where they don't speak English, the language of the law is very different from the language of the people. Now, if I use Aristotle saying it is twice removed from the reality, then now in a situation where it is a second, the language of even the language itself is a second language, then it is twice removed from reality, because there is the English, the actual English, that is a problem, even to the law enforcer, and then there is the legal register that is in itself a challenge, and therefore you are twice disadvantaged. Now, the other question which I mentioned yesterday during the cocktail is the question of what happens in courts. And in many, in the majority of the local courts, and the citizens there cannot afford, and they don't see the need for a lawyer. So they represent themselves before the magistrate. And in the majority of the cases, the magistrate and that accused person may not speak the same language. And therefore, this brings in the translators, the interpreters. And so the question here comes, when we know that in the practice, in the exercise, in the engagement of in these legal matters, language can be a barrier. Why would it be the case that we do not have institutions? I know there is one in the University of Nairobi, which is not 10 years old yet, on translation and training professional translators and professional interpreters for these purposes. Can we be sure that justice is served in situations where the translator is a person who stopped, the accused did not go to school, and the other one went up to standard 8, and after school, nothing much to read, but at least can speak some Kiswahili in that local court? I think that's a question. And finally, the other question that I thought we would want to consider and think about as we look at this conference is something to do with hate speech. You know, hate speech is a big thing in Kenya. We talk about it. And one of my colleagues has been looking at who has ever been convicted of hate speech and what exactly was the discourse towards that conviction. And what we note is that what is meant is more than what is said. What is meant is more than what is said. To get meaning, what people mean when they are saying something, you need to look at where it is being said, when it is being said, how it is being said. You know, whether there's a whisper, there's a change in the pitch, there's a change in the pace of the talking, or there's even a change in the language, that I was speaking in Kiswahili and then I turned to my mother tongue. How it is, when it is said, where it is said, how it is said, to whom it is said, what is known about the speaker before this speaking, what is known about the audience before this speaking, and what is known about the context where that speaking is taking place. And so the question in this area is, how do language experts come in during the prosecution of people accused of hate speech? How do we involve discourse analysis, understanding of the structure and the context, the pragmatics of speech, in deciding that this person did not mean this? If somebody says, I just said, weka taya, God is repeated. I think some Kenyans here will remember such a phrase. And I know that when they said, we knew that within the context of where it was spoken and the context of what had been happening, where Kataya meant. Choma huyo. That is what it meant. But the fellow said, I didn't say that you banned them. I just said, where Kataya? And I meant, where Kataya? That is repeated. Then another one says, that's why I gave them pangas. Now Yasin said, that's why I gave them pangas. And you say that you are inciting people to violence. Say, no, there are so many things that you do with pangas. But then if you look at the linguistic context of the speech, then you find that you can establish what this meant. And therefore, I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, yes, as my colleague Professor Mogane said, probably we need to also, linguists also need to go and teach in Kenya School of Law. Because there is a lot in the interpretation of what people mean, when they say things, what people mean when they do things, that is more than the verbal, the analysis of the words and the phrases and the clauses. Because I can stand and say, it is very cold today. Now, what action will follow from that depends on the context where we are. If there is an open window, somebody might go and close that window. If there is a sweater somewhere, somebody may give me a sweater. So the action is not determined only by the words I say. And therefore, I look at it and I say that there is a lot of collaboration that needs to happen between the people who practice law and language experts. Thank you.